Well, I think we are live, and I hopefully that part got cut out. We were just joking around. We already got things going. It's 30 with Karen and Justin, and this thing sneaks up on me every time I press buttons, and I don't know what I'm doing with technology half the time. So, we have a special 30 with Karen and Justin today. First of all, Karen's not here; she's not available because of the timing of this. However, we are trying to get as many of these folks on as possible to give you people the information you need to make an informed decision. And as we know, last week we had Lisa Kearns on, and this week another special guest at a special time, Rory Nisan. Listen, thank you for coming on. Thank you for making time. I know this time of year with everything going on is very busy, and we appreciate you.
Hey, I'm happy to be here, Justin, and I think it's awesome what you're doing for the community, not just by having candidates on, but just being out there and showcasing the best of Burlington. So thank you for doing that.
You know what? Burlington's a great city. I was born here. Well, technically I was born in Oakville at Oakville Trafalgar from Memorial Hospital, but the first place I lived was in Burlington. So moved straight to Burlington downtown, or not downtown, right down by Burloak and Lakeshore in a rental hotel, or not a rental hotel, rental apartment building that my parents lived in, and lived in Burlington all my life. So I have a special passion for this city because I still believe it's the best city in all of Canada, quite frankly.
I couldn't agree more, Justin. Yeah, my family moved in 1989 into Brant Hills, first in a semi-detached, then a detached house, and I couldn't have asked for a better upbringing than what I got out of Burlington. A safe community, a clean community where people are just kind to each other. It means a lot.
No, I agree. And I feel like it's getting better. And so let's start there. Let's start with you as a human being. I really want to get into like, what drew you into the political spectrum? I mean, it seems like you had some other stuff going on in the background. You've been things like the foreign affairs advisor at Foreign Affairs Canada to municipal governance. Like, how does all this play out in your world where you start from a little guy in Burlington growing up and now you want to be in politics?
Yeah, thanks. You know what? Like so many things, your parents have such an influence on who you're going to be growing up, and my parents were a positive influence for sure. My father was a psychotherapist based in Toronto. My mom worked in his office as a therapist as well, and my dad's thing running that clinic was that people could pay whatever they could afford. He just wanted people to get better, and if a kid came in then and the parents couldn't pay, he would still see the kid for nothing. And so, that's the kind of ethics that I grew up in. And it's no surprise, my older sister, she also has worked in international nonprofits trying to make a difference. I myself really just thought that the best career you could make would be one where you're making change, right? So I thought, okay, I'm going to take that to the logical extent and say, I want to make change internationally. I want to change the world, right? Like, why not?
Go big or go home.
Go big or go home. Yeah, exactly. And so I took political science and then international affairs for grad school, and managed to work my way into the Canadian Foreign Service. So that means representing Canada internationally in negotiations. I mostly was based in Ottawa, but I served at the United Nations and NATO also. And there were some great moments in that career, moments of impact for sure. But overall, I learned a few things. I learned that bureaucracies are big and hard to change. I learned that it's the politicians who make the decisions. And I wanted to be a decision maker, not a decision taker. So that's what led me to running for office. And when I got together with my now wife and she was in the GTA, I was able to work from home. I said, let's go back to Burlington. She said, what's Burlington? Like, I don't know if she'd even been to Burlington. Her family was in Toronto and then Ajax, settled in Ajax. And I'm not going to throw any, I don't want, Ajax in the comments here. But I got to say, I was very like, no, it's got to be Burlington, and no regrets in coming back home to such an amazing community. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to be the decision maker. I'm going to run for office. And I took 6 months off work. I forewent some work opportunities because I wanted to make that change. And 6 months off work, knocking on doors 7 days a week for 6 months. 15,000 door knocks, 5,000 conversations, and I won with 54% of the vote.
That's amazing. That's, I mean, and clearly, you know, people like you so far, so that's good so far. I'm
Well, I'm
hearing good
still in
things.
office.
You're still
Yeah.
in office, so that's good news.
They don't have to like you, they have to vote for you.
How does some of the bigger picture foreign affairs stuff and the diplomatic stuff that you've done affect the decisions and the things you do here now on a more like micro or local scale?
Well, some of the practice is very similar. So,
Mm.
I think back to, and this was one of the most rewarding times in my campaign was when I was for a season negotiating resolutions at the United Nations. And you're basically in a basement with no windows for security reasons, big long table like a board table, and you've got your spot, and then you've got the European Union, the U.S., China, Russia, Brazil, India, all around the table, trying to come to grips with a resolution and
Right.
a decision for the United Nations. And it's actually not that different than the council table. The practice is the same. You got to build bridges, you got to find coalitions, you got to listen carefully and actually take into account what others are saying, and you have to compromise for the betterment of whatever community that you are serving. And that's what I did my best to do. I brokered some compromises at the UN and done everything I can to find consensus and broker compromise on Burlington Council as well. That being said, sometimes you do have to stand out, whether it's in opposition or a more challenging issue. It's the same thing, whether it's Canada or Burlington, you got to stand up for what you believe in.
Looking back at what you've done so far in Ward 3, do you have any specific accomplishments that you would figure best demonstrate your leadership style to voters across the city?
Wow.
That's a good one, right?
Yeah, that is a good one. Sure. Story time. So when I was knocking on those 15,000 doors, I was on Glastonbury Crescent in Brant Hills. And when you're knocking on doors, you start looking for clues. As I was knocking on this door, I noticed a lot of small shoes outside the doors, right? Like muddy shoes outside. Okay, we've got a family. Okay. So I opened the door and a mom answered and she said, here's the thing. We don't have a splash pad in Brant Hills. I said, okay. What about the one at Ireland Park? It's too far. Like either it's a half-hour walk and then the kids have to go to the bathroom. We have to turn around, or I got to pile them into the van and take them there. And, that takes a long time as well. We need something locally. Now, I didn't have a kid at the time. I do now, and I understand it even better now than I did then. But I listened and I said, geez, that's a good idea. And looking around, there wasn't any splash pad in Brant Hills. Right. Even Mountainside, it's sort of behind a fence as part of the pool. And so I started, as I knocked on more doors, I started saying, what do you think about a splash pad? Oh, that would be great. Not just the parents, but the grandparents are saying, yeah, we could definitely do that.
Of course.
And well, it became the number one plank on my flyer. This is my new one, but this was the flyer. We came right on the top of the flyer, splash pad in Brant Hills.
Nice.
Now, the person I was running against was sort of knocking on doors behind me, telling people that I wasn't being realistic, that there wasn't room at the Brant Hills Park for it. And he wasn't wrong, because I found out later that staff had actually told the person I was trying to succeed that, in fact, that was the case. So I got elected. And to be honest, I got elected with almost enough votes in Brant Hills to carry me in the whole ward. So I had a mandate, but I also had a challenge, which was I got to get the splash pad built, or I'm a failure, First thing I did, I talked to our new city manager. I said, I got to get the splash pad built. He said, okay, I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you find a funding source, and you can meet with our landscape architect and sort this out. Okay, I met the landscape architect. She said, oh, yes, we did look into this. Unfortunately, there's no room at the park. I said, okay, well, what about up here? No, that's an area that floods too much. Okay, well, what about over here? It's just not big enough, and it's far away from the road, the pipe, it's going to be a problem. I said, okay, what about right here, right behind the baseball diamond? There's already a park there, and it seems to be like an open area. And the architect said, well, we looked at that too. That would have been the best spot. But the problem is that the softballs and the baseballs are going to go over the
Mm.
fence and drop right down where the splash pad would be. Like the park is further away, so it's not a problem, but we couldn't do that. It'd be
Yep.
too dangerous. And I said, well, what if we built a bigger fence? And they said, okay, let me look into it. Well, the community got behind it. They did look into it for an added cost of a fence. And in the end, they decided to double the fence, to put a second fence right up against the splash pad. Guess what? We got the splash pad built. I had the support of my colleagues. I demonstrated that we were in a splash pad desert. There wasn't anything around it. We created the little map with a little circle, like, where's the splash pad? Everyone else has one. Where's ours? And convinced them. And now COVID delayed it by a year. But by the end of the term, I had that splash pad. In 2023, we had that splash pad built. Sorry, 2021. Kids were playing with it. And you know what happened, which I didn't expect, was it became a social area. Because whereas before the kids would play soccer, they would get really hot, they would go home and shower or whatever and move on, watch TV. With the splash pad there, they could go play their kids' sports, their Timbit sports or whatever, go cool down in the splash pad, go to the park, back to the splash pad. The parents were setting up picnics underneath the trees. And, if you went there now, you'd probably see some kids in that splash pad. And guess what, Justin? They'll never be able to take that away, because once you put an amenity in, they will fight for it. So
yeah, and what's interesting is that is quite a nice park to begin with, right? It's a very nice space. And you're right, was missing the one little piece. And the thing is, when these things are designed initially back in the day, they didn't have splash pads the same way that they do now.
Correct.
So it wasn't necessarily a priority. And so now having to fit one in, it's a pretty significant job. So kudos.
So part two of your question, Justin, is like, how would I apply that leadership today? I advocated with my colleagues. I made the case. I listened to their concerns. Some of them said, well, I need a splash pad as well. And I said, listen, bring that forward. I will support you if it's justified. Make the case. I've shown you how I've done it. You can do it too. You can also get the community behind it. And and I showed an open mind. And a second splash pad was built at Lansdowne Park that has similar need in Palmer area.
Nice.
So that's the kind of consensus building that I can bring to the table through leadership.
I wasn't aware of this, but you were deputy mayor of the environment, if I'm not mistaken, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, the environment, including, yeah, that's right. The environment. Yeah.
So how do you plan to balance Burlington's green goals? Because there are some goals set in place with some of the necessary development that is going on or that is required to move forward that may not be in congruous kind of nature to the goals.
Yeah, I think that's fair. A lot of the things that we do and that we depend on in our community do have a negative environmental impact, right? We have to be honest with that. We live in a lot of detached housing here, right? And we're not taking that away. People drive around in cars, SUVs, and so on, and that's, they should have their right to do that. The important thing is that the city as a municipality is taking steps to ensure that first and foremost, that what we do corporately doesn't have a negative impact on the environment. Some of these things, Justin, you've outlined a tension between sometimes economic needs and environmental. In many cases, they can go hand in hand with a little more work. Like, we're going to electrify our fleet. We're not just doing that for the environment. We're going to save money on that in the long run.
Yes.
It's an upfront cost that saves you money over time. Look at the gas prices right now. Look at the diesel prices. So I'm good for electrifying the fleet, not just for the environment, but for the economy as well.
Well, and I don't want to labor on a huge point that you may not be able to get into the fine details of, but there's a lot of consternation around the data centers that are coming right now. So where is the balance between everybody wanting this and all the amenities that those things provide, and even the internet we're sitting on right now, and the things that come and go from that, and the potential impact of the energy that goes into a data center, the water and things that go into a data center? What are the impacts, and how do you balance those things, not even just on a data center level, but on any level?
Absolutely. Regulations do exist for a reason. We all talk about decreasing red tape. But if you want to see a jurisdiction that has minimal regulations, that would be in the United States of America. And that's where a lot of the concerns come out of, where you hear the
Mhm.
loud buzzing or natural gas generators going 24/7. That would never be allowed here. The province has put in regulations already that's differentiated between above 50 megawatts and below 50 megawatts. The one in Burlington that they're applying for would be 17 megawatts. 17 megawatts is less than some of the biggest supercomputers that we have in the world. So the context is key, but what's really important is that we have strong regulations that protect our quality of life in Burlington, and that any environmental concerns are also properly allayed. So I think it's really important that we have facts over fear here. And the role of politicians, one of the most important roles, is to share facts and to let people know the truth, because that is our job as their representatives. It's not to get them riled up, it's to tell them the truth. And if an impact is negative, then we have to oppose it. Look at the intermodal hub, the CN Rail intermodal hub. We took that as far as we could. We took it to the Supreme Court. Halton did. We spent millions of dollars fighting it. You know why? Because it was bad for the human health of our residents in Halton, Milton especially, but including Burlington as well, including people in my ward in rural Burlington. We have to fight the good fight when it's justified, but that doesn't mean that we play on people's fear.
Progress is a thing, right? Like, and it's funny because there's a lot of, well, you can't stop it, whether it's technology or otherwise, whether it's, immigration, there's so many different things that relate to progress and things happening and growth. And this is the game you play as a politician, is balancing the need for the support for that progress and the need for your constituents to be happy and to live a healthy, happy life as well. And so what's interesting, you brought up a really interesting point when you talked about truth and so on. Politics is an incredibly, trying to think of the word that's not too vicious for the audience, but there's a lot of vitriol and a lot of bad things happening in politics right now. A lot of it centered around the idea that there's people in another country creating a narrative around politics that they can just say whatever they want, and that becomes real. And the more I say it, the more real it becomes. And everybody that's reporting on it, they're all fake, and you're fake, and you're fake, and you're fake. I'm right. Right. So how do you fight through the noise of and bring that truth and that realism to the job in order to provide your folks and your constituents with the actual truth? How do we make that happen again? How do we bring a certain level of respect back to politics?
Wow, great question. Great question. Fundamentally, it's going to be people who vote with their feet, who decide what kind of politics we're going to have, because they're going to vote for politicians who are telling them the truth, and they're going to do their research on the candidates and look into them and their platforms and separate the truth from the fiction. But as politicians, I think that, and this is what I try to do, is you do your homework, right? You do your homework, you understand the issue. You don't shoot first and ask questions later. It's not like that US military term, ready, fire, aim. You got to think it through and take your time. Don't rush that video out there to tell people that everything's going to heck. Instead, you take your time, you do your research, you understand the issue, you come to terms with that and determine what the truth is. And then you take that to your residents. And I'm sure you've probably noticed that I am proliferate on social media, not because I like it, but because that's the way to get through to people. So once I've established what I think is right, okay, and we could have a philosophical discussion about what truth is. But once I've done my research and I figured out what I think is right and wrong for the community, you will find me, especially on controversial issues, I will be shouting it from the rooftops, because you have to get that message through. You have to get through what you believe in. And people have busy lives. People are doing their daily lives. So once you've figured out what's right and what you want, how you want to represent the community on an issue, you got to shout it. You got to get out there. That's the only way. Otherwise, the fact is that whether it's fear mongering or populism from the States or negativity, that is unjustified. All of that is going to rise above the truth and respect and that kind of thing,
Yes.
unless you work twice as hard to get the word out about it.
Mm. So actually, I just got a question from the audience, which we'll do in a few minutes, but I just got texted into me.
Are you saying there's an audience, Justin?
There's an audience out there. Yeah, we are live, man.
I thought this was a
this
Zoom
is
call.
this whole thing with you guys doing this is the first time we've actually had live audience questions, which is great. I sell real estate, as you know, or others know on our show. And one of the things that's big right now is housing affordability. There's a lot of comments around immigration and a few other things that are creating stress on the system in general. We don't have enough housing and so on. Do you have any plan to approach sort of density, tall building developments? But at the same time, again, we talk about these juxtapositions of preservation at the same time. So like, what are your thoughts on sort of providing more housing that's more affordable, but at the same time, preserving the neighborhoods that need to be preserved without having massive, buildings in certain parts of the city?
Yeah, great question, Justin. The reality shifted under our feet over the last term of council, from a place up till 2021 where it was just as home values were increasing exponentially over time, and we had the luxury of saying no to certain properties and being able to push that point of view. Now we understand there's an affordability problem in our community. One way that I'm going to address affordability, by the way, this is a bit of an aside, but is by keeping taxes low. Because Justin, I know you don't just sell real estate, buddy. You put people into their first homes.
Yep.
You put people into their forever homes. You put people into their retirement. Into where they're going to be the empty nesters, into their bungalows or their townhouses or their condos. To get people to qualify for those, especially the first-time buyers, the higher the taxes are, the less mortgage room they actually have to qualify. The less public transit we have, the more people need 2 cars in their house versus 1. And then they have a car payment and then they can't qualify. This is where affordability is so important, and that a lot of it goes through the tax rate. But to address your question about housing, the truth is a lot of people now, they want to live in ground-oriented housing. So detached, semi-detached, and townhouses. There's got to be some opening up of communities, not in Burlington, because we're built out practically. There are a few locations that we've supported, that I certainly support, that have those kinds of building. 1200 King Road has some of that, and Brawny Meadows at Upper Middle and Burloak is going to have a lot of that. So that's good. There's no market for condos right now. We also have to, but Justin, a lot of this is political, and we have to admit that that the policies around the downtown, the whole design of that from 2019 on, the downtown agenda failed. The mayor's agenda failed on this, unfortunately. We were only able to stop one building from getting built, and they're going to come back with another application. And a lot of it hinges on relationships. Doug Ford said, I don't know what's happening in Burlington when it came to our ability to add units in our community. So I'm going to turn that around, and it's going to start with relationships, and it's going to start with a focus on supporting business jobs in our community.
You mentioned the transportation, which is an interesting way of looking at it. And I never thought of that side of it. I've always been a family with 2 cars, and we've been comfortable that way. And I've never thought of it that way, where, if you ditch a car and use public transit more, you could be saving a little bit of money here and there. Do you have any plans, aside from the electrification of the fleet, any other plans to improve local transit and the infrastructure to keep up with the population growth we're seeing?
Well, when it comes to local infrastructure, and yes, I do support having more public transit in general, so long as it's justified, because I believe it is an affordability measure for our community, and it's an economic growth measure because it brings people to their jobs who otherwise wouldn't potentially not be able to have that mobility to get there. Because there's the sort of the people who are trying to afford their home, or people getting by in home ownership with maybe 1 car instead of 2. And then there's people who are just trying to afford their rent, who are just looking for a job that they can get to. And a lot of minimum wage jobs. If you have a minimum wage job now, you may not be able to afford a vehicle. Let's be honest. Just the insurance and the maintenance and the tires alone and the gas. So we have to have options for them. It's a net gain economically, public transit.
So this sort of ties in a little bit to this is a hot button topic right now. These e-scooters and e-bikes.
Oh yeah.
So I understand that there's definitely there's a pilot program going on in Burlington right now, Centennial Trail only. There's a few issues around that, and it's very difficult to police because of the nature of the program. And the police don't want to be ticketing every 15-year-old that's driving around on these scooters right now because it's so new. But part of the positive of this comment is, as you say, if someone can't afford a car, but they can afford a few $100 e-scooter to purchase to be able to get themselves to and from their job, or e-bike or something, that sort of alleviates a bit of an issue for them as a whole. But if we're leaning towards making them illegal, or I don't know what the reality is, that could pose that problem and take away their opportunity. So what's the status of this e-scooter thing, and where are we headed with it?
Yeah, so e-scooters are illegal outside of a pilot area. So we have a provincially approved pilot area on this Centennial pathway. And part of that is to have a legal outlet for people to try these things, right? Versus them just doing it illegally. And also to show them what a good e-scooter is like, what a safer e-scooter is like, and to nudge them into a more safe path, by pushing them to have a helmet, for example.
Well, and they're off the roadways in that trail as well, for the most part, right?
Yeah, but I mean, there's still conflicts with pedestrians.
Sure.
Those e-scooters, they also have speed limiters on them that adjust based on your geolocation. So they're kind of best in class for that. I think that's a good path. Is there a role for e-scooters in our transportation future? Yes, there certainly is. It's a niche. What happened to the bicycle, Justin? All the things you're describing, you could
agreed
with strong legs and a bike you can handle, with some important exceptions. Like sometimes, seniors, for example, may want to, and I've seen a few who use e-bikes particularly, right? More of the e-bikes than the e-scooters. But listen, these things are dangerous. I cannot understand for the life of me why a parent would let their 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old essentially ride around in a motorcycle without a helmet on. And they're going fast. They're not safe. They're not stable at those speeds, at the above 30 km/h speed. So where are the parents in all this? If you're asking for a practical solution, I personally think the province should be able to seize any overpowered e-scooter that they spot out there. And I think that there also needs to be some public communication about the illegality of these things. I think some parents don't know. I would like to get them.
I think the sentiment that I'm hearing, and I'm on a lot of these Facebook groups, and I follow through and listen and see some of these comments. The sentiment to me feels like, oh, but back in the day we had skateboards that everyone complained about, or this, that, or the other. And I'm like, this is not the same thing. This is not the same animal. I was at a stoplight last night, literally, and a kid flew by me at the same speed as the cars that were going by me on the intersection. This was a teenager. And I'm like, this teenager has not been taught the rules of the road, has not had understanding of the speed, and really as a young person has this invincibility attitude a lot of these kids have, that that they're not going to get hurt. I sit on the fence of, we need to regulate these in some way, shape, or form if they're going to be used, because the shame of it for me, and I've said this before, is I don't want to have a problem that is not undoable, like a kid getting really seriously or killed before we make a decision. I think the decisions need to be made ahead of time on this one, and I think this is a very important issue because the city's full of these kids, and it's to the point of, I appreciate adults making their way to work and things like that and understanding that, but the kids are the ones that I'm most concerned about. One little decision can change someone's life. I've been to 2 funerals in the last month and a half of 17-year-olds, one of which was a car accident. I'm not saying it could have been avoided, but it's just terrible to lose young people. It's terrible this way. And I don't want that to happen to any of my, and the other part of it, and I'll just add one last thing. I shouldn't talk so much. I got to let you talk more, but it's as much for the kid that's driving the e-scooter as it is for the people that are driving the cars around the kid with the e-scooter. How damaged would I be, or my 19-year-old, if my 19-year-old hit a kid that bolted out onto the road and killed him?
Mm-hmm.
Now my 19-year-old is messed up for the rest of his life for killing a kid.
Yeah.
You know, it's the whole thing is a pretty big topic that needs addressing. That I won't get into the fine details of it now, but I'm just saying it out loud so our audience can hear and get riled up about it.
Well, you know, if we weren't a lame duck council, I'd probably be bringing a motion in September. So very early in the new term, I will absolutely bring a motion on this. There's a right way and a wrong way to deal with any new technology. This has major safety downsides when improperly used. So I would like to see people pushed towards the safer e-scooters and the safer conduct. They should have speed limiters on them, and they should not be ridden by people without any training. I mean, kids should be riding bicycles.
Yes.
Kids should be riding bicycles because they can't go faster than your legs. And, you know, there's just too much power under an e-scooter, under people's feet. And listen, I think they say the male brain isn't fully formed until 25. So, you know,
I'm not sure mine's done yet either.
You know, we're always developing, Justin, as guys. So, yeah, we got to do better. A lot of it will come down to the province, in all honesty. But let's get that ball rolling. I'm going to be talking about this at the Association of Municipalities of Ontario conference I'm going to next week, because it is a real safety issue. I don't want anyone in Burlington to die for this or to have a traumatic brain injury. It's just not worth it. I brought a Vision Zero motion that was almost unanimously supported, with putting money behind it, that we will see through in the next term, and I guarantee you this will be part of that.
Cool. Let's talk a little bit about economic growth and community governance. Do you have a blueprint for attracting new business and more higher paying jobs to Burlington while supporting, you know, some of the local commercial sectors that are already here?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So the number one thing for supporting new businesses is around permits for them to get going.
Right.
It takes too long to get these permits.
Right.
We're not best in class. We should be best in class. We should be comparing ourselves to the private sector, not towards Hamilton or Oakville. And even so, we could be doing a lot better, even by any comparison. You know, this is what I say. Our permit wait times, our development permit wait times, are whatever they are, they're stable. They're stable at a slow rate.
Yes.
If we can stabilize it at a slow rate, how about we stabilize it at a faster rate? You know, I'm not saying it's a snap your fingers kind of thing, but I believe it is absolutely doable if we have a mayor who's focused on the business community. If we can get permit wait times down, take care of red tape, which hasn't been a focus this term. It was in the first term, and then it disappeared. And then we can get more jobs, local economy going with more jobs for our own residents, and that will have great knock-on impacts. Some of these businesses, it costs them thousands of dollars for a 2-week delay. That's money that could be hiring staff.
Yeah.
Right. Those are jobs that we're just giving away. I helped a cafe in my ward, just by bringing their issues forward. I always say to people, I can't get your permit, you know, fast. I can't just go get your permit for you. But if we're not meeting our own standards, I will step in and I will ask some questions.
Sure.
And you know, their milk was expiring. They were just trying to open.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're just trying to get going in a cafe that has 1 or 2 employees, we can't let that happen. You know, we need a new mindset at City Hall when it comes to the job growth in the economy, when it comes to economic development. This is one thing I can lean on from my international career, is I know how to talk to businesses from other cultures, how to draw them in. And I've had some success of that with Councillor Galbraith over in Japan on economic development. And I think we're going to need to do more of that. We're going to need to do more of that because it's a very competitive environment, and we need to bring those jobs in to support the local economy.
I really feel like, being a lifelong resident of Burlington, one of the pillars of Burlington's success over the years has been its ability to draw a good mix of commercial businesses into the city. To be like, there's even today, not today, but in the last few weeks, I've seen names of companies that are like based in Burlington, Ontario. And I'm like, what? Oh, wow, that's cool. Like, that's really neat. I can't remember off the top of my head, but you wouldn't have thought, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. So I can only assume that, continuing to foster that growth and that opportunity with new businesses coming in will also help the tax rate, and like across the board, right? You're bringing in new business, more taxes being paid will allow you to have some opportunity to potentially lower taxes in other areas, if I'm not mistaken. I mean,
Oh,
I'm no,
you are not mistaken, Justin. No, you are absolutely right. If you want to keep taxes low, which I do, and I want to turn around the tax increases of the past, you do that through economic growth by increasing the commercial tax base. And
right.
those businesses, they're happy to pay taxes. They may not like the rate, but they're happy to pay taxes because their business is running and operating, and they know that's part of what they do. Our residents, on the other hand, the less jobs we create, the more burden it is on them, and it's not fiscally responsible to make them pay more. So, our Economic Development Corporation has done incredible work to bring jobs. Justin, the number one, the city with the most jobs per capita in the GTA is Toronto. The city with the second most jobs per capita in the GTA is Burlington.
Amazing.
And
that's amazing.
That's without Ford, that's without Stelco, that's without a single massive employer. We've got some good sized ones, but no massive employer. So that's bootstrapping. That is the ingenuity, entrepreneurial spirit of our residents and of people wanting to come here. And our Economic Development Corporation, which for some reason, City Hall, the leadership wanted to bring in-house. The last thing it needed to do was to be under the control of a strong mayor, and B, a city bureaucracy. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And that board of directors has done great oversight work. This is the kind of navel gazing, Justin, that keeps us from building our local economy. When we're thinking like, oh, should the Economic Development Corporation be part of the city? Should they stay independent? How about we just develop some key performance indicators, make sure they're bringing jobs in, and then don't touch it if they are, which is exactly what they have been doing. But when you're spending hours and hours, we literally had the chair of the board of economic development delegating to city council saying, please keep us separate. I was looking around the room at 50, 60 people in the room, all paid, with the exception of the board, all paid staff spending time on this issue instead of going out and getting jobs and supporting City Hall.
So on that note, you have a need to want to bring in more, commercial businesses and explore that. But at the same time, Burlington has a lot of wonderful green space and open areas. How do you balance that commercial aspect and you want dining, you want all those things with the open green space and the environmental protection and the waterfront for that matter, because the waterfront is getting crowded a little bit.
Yeah, the water. Yes, listen, I support having more green space in our community and higher quality green space as well, and being smart about our green space to maximize its utility to the community. A great example of that is the Beachway Park. So Halton Region has had plans to and is implementing a master plan there that involves buying up all the houses and turning that into a big park.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying is yes to that. B, can we expedite it? Can we do it faster? Can we get a partial gain there? Because that land, there's green space there that is owned by Halton Region now. Let's turn that into small parks, parkettes, passive space, cricket fields, whatever we can. Let's do that sooner. And finally, I want to turn that space into the most kid-friendly waterfront park in Canada. We've already got a jewel in Spencer Smith Park, and that was through a vision that we had, 50, 60 years ago. That was a decision by a city council to protect that park. And so I want to take this to the next level. As we said about the splash pad isn't just good, not the splash pad, but like a kid park is good for the kids. It's good for the parents. It's good for the grandparents. It's good for the aunts and uncles. Anybody who knows a kid is going to love it there.
Sure.
And, you know, we can add some amenities for everybody.
Okay, I'm going to slide over to, we've got 2 questions from listeners that are live and listening now.
Okay.
We'll start with one. What does truth and reconciliation mean to you?
Wow, a great question. For me, truth and reconciliation is about practical solutions to support Indigenous peoples. So it's about referencing to the calls for action of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Absolutely, it's about UNDRIP, UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, and the implementation of that. However, you know, leaving aside these acronyms, it really is about practical results of making sure that our Indigenous people are supported and have every opportunity here in Burlington to be successful. There have been calls over time for having an Indigenous center in Halton region, a single location, whether you call it a community center, a friendship center, a economic center, whatever you want to call it. And it's not going to be me or you deciding what to call it, but what the Indigenous community wants it to be. I support that 100%, and I'll find the funding for it if I'm elected. And there has to be a process for determining what that is going to look like. But that is a practical thing that we can do that will make a difference. And I think it's time.
Excellent. That's amazing. Okay, this is an interesting one. This is not something that's been on my radar, and perhaps you know something about it. Bail reform. Burlington has more people out on bail than ever, and it is a provincial issue. How are you supporting the community and its victims?
Oh, great question.
This is hardcore. I like this one.
Yeah. I mean, advocating to the federal government for bail reform is something that I have done on Parliament Hill. In my role as chair of the Ontario caucus of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. That's a lot of words, but essentially we advocate to the federal government on behalf of our local residents. And bail reform is a longstanding issue. I'm glad to see some change, and I think it took a change in Prime Minister perhaps for this to become an emphasis. But either way, I'm hoping that will pay some dividends. Now, locally, what we can do, we can certainly address some of the root causes of crime, and I've supported increased funding to the Halton Region Community Investment Fund, which gets at the social causes of crime. We can support our police, which I support as well, and I've supported more police officers when the mayor did not, and I've always supported having that budget fully funded. So that's important, because the truth is that the police are often at the front lines of these issues, and they're also supporting victims in the most important moments. So those are the services I want to see, and certainly advocating to the provincial government as well. One of the problems is unfortunately not enough jail cells, and not having appropriate courthouse, and delays in the courthouses as leading to acquittals, or bail exists because of the principle of innocent until proven guilty. But we have to also recognize some facts here, and when people are offending repeatedly and are dangerous to the community. So as a locally elected official, the most practical thing I can do is support addressing root causes, and supporting the police, and supporting victim services.
There has been from what I gather from the news that I've been reading across Burlington, there's been a bit of an influx in younger people committing more crimes as well, which I'm finding, I think, happening more and more. Sort of the root behind that being that they understand that they're going to get a slap on the wrist and be back out on the street in a few weeks, or a week, or even days. And then back at it. Is there anything to be done there from a municipal level, or is that more provincial? Like, how does that play in?
Yeah, it's a good point, and I do want to track back to what we were saying about the e-scooters, which is that these kids are being turned into criminals without fully developed brains.
Mhm.
and they're being turned by adults into criminals.
Mhm.
And I've seen, I've heard our one of our MPPs for Burlington, Z Hamid, talk about getting at those people who are those recruiters. I think
Mhm.
it's absolutely critical that we do get at them, and that we also talk to kids about it as they're growing up, when they're 10, 11, 12, and they're vulnerable to being recruited into crime, that we stop that before it happens.
Mhm.
Do kids make that calculus? Probably. They're also being told that that's the case. Oh, go to
100%.
court, you know?
I was kind of suggesting that it's definitely not the kids thinking. It's an easy way for someone who is able to recruit a child and get them to do some things and feel cool and feel these, you know what I mean? Like there's a recruiting process involved, and I'm not
There's a
suggesting.
grooming process,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
you
Yeah,
know, as
yeah,
well as the other side of grooming, and it's sickening. I find it
yeah,
absolutely sickening.
yeah.
And it's also cyclical. It's a cycle that we have to crush. The province should be making more investments in getting to the bottom of that. But I also have seen some good faith attempts by them to address these recruiters, which is a good thing.
That's amazing. Well, listen, we're pushing up against that hour time frame, and you've been very generous at this point with your time. So I just want to leave everyone with one last thing. If you could, if you have a message for the people watching, you know, hey, this is why you should vote for me. Whatever you want to say, this is your moment. This is just the spotlight's on you, putting you on the spot here to give your elevator pitch.
I feel like I'm on Hot Ones at the
There
end.
you go. Hot ones. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
it.
yeah, and your
With
mouth is
less the
like
wings.
all swollen, and you're like, "Oh, watch my show," you know. So, yeah, but without the hot wings.
Yeah.
Thank you, Justin, for having me on your live here. It's again, it means a lot to me that there's so many people in our community who are showing engagement. This is how democracy works, and it can also be when people are not engaged, how democracy fails. So let's not let that happen here in Burlington. Let's get a big turnout in this election. If you are listening or watching this and you're a voter, that is a great start. How about you get 3 or 4 more people to come out and vote as well? My promise is what I believe is the promise of Burlington, which is a future that is fiscally responsible, affordable, and that gives us all quality of life. That is what I had in Burlington growing up. That's the city I want to have for my son when he grows up as well. And I think we can get it done together.
That's amazing. I appreciate that. Everyone, this has been Rory Nisan. He's running for mayor in Burlington. And so if you are a Burlington citizen and you are out there going to vote, well, if you're not going to vote, you should get out and vote. Let's do that first. Step 1 and step 2, get out there and do the thing. And let's get someone good in there. Rory is one of the candidates who's been generous enough to give us his time today. Appreciate you, Rory. And we will be back soon with another episode. So thanks for coming on, and thanks for watching, everyone.
Thanks for the endorsement, Justin. I'm just kidding.
Not trying to play it down the middle here. Let's. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Bye bye.